Imagine a city where silence is not peace but fear. Streets once alive with markets now echo only with the footsteps of soldiers. A river, instead of carrying trade boats, runs heavy with the bodies of the slain. This is not fiction, but history, the dark reality of Japanese crimes in China during World War II, a story of conquest, cruelty, and survival that shaped the course of Asia forever. Welcome to Sands of History, where we uncover the forgotten, the silenced, and the buried truths of our past. If you're passionate about history and want to journey with us through the shadows and the light of civilizations, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive. And if you'd like to help us continue creating in-depth historical content, you'll find links in the description to support us financially. The Road to War, Japan's expansionist dream. At the dawn of the 20th century, Japan was rising rapidly as a modern imperial power. Inspired by Western colonizers and driven by a hunger for resources, Japan turned its gaze toward China land, rich in territory, population, and raw materials. The First Sino-Japanese War, 1894-95, and the invasion of Manchuria in 1931 had already set the stage. By the mid-1930s, Japan was no longer content with partial control. China, under Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government, was fractured by internal strife and regional warlords, making it vulnerable. The Marco Polo Bridge incident of 1937 lit the fuse for full-scale war. What followed would plunge China into one of the darkest chapters of its history. The Nanjing Massacre, 6 weeks of horror. The most infamous of Japanese crimes in China came in December 1937 with the capture of Nanjing, then the capital of China. For 6 weeks, the Imperial Japanese Army unleashed a campaign of terror that became known as the Rape of Nanjing. Historians estimate that between 200,000 to 300,000 civilians and prisoners of war were massacred. But the brutality did not end with executions. Women young and old were subjected to mass rape. Contemporary accounts describe girls as young as 7 and women in their 70s among the victims. Entire families were destroyed, not only physically but psychologically, as acts of sexual violence were often carried out in front of loved ones. Soldiers competed in killing contests, treating human life as a game. The International Committee for the Nanjing Safety Zone, composed of Westerners, documented much of the horror. Diaries, photographs, and testimonies survive, leaving behind undeniable evidence. To this day, the Nanjing Massacre stands as a grim reminder of how war dehumanizes both victim and perpetrator. Unit 731. Science turned to savagery. If Nanjing represented open brutality, then Unit 731 symbolized calculated cruelty hidden behind the guise of science. Based in Harbin, Manchuria, Unit 731 was a secret biological and chemical warfare research facility led by General Shiro Ishii. Here, thousands of Chinese civilians, and some captured soldiers, were subjected to inhumane experiments. Vivisection without anesthesia to study the effects of disease and injury on living bodies. Deliberate infection with plague, cholera, and anthrax. Frostbite experiments where limbs were frozen and thawed until they rotted. Forced sexual violence to transmit syphilis for medical observation. The victims were referred to not as humans, but as logsa, chilling dehumanization that erased their identity. Estimates suggest over 200,000 people died as a result of Unit 731's experiments and biological warfare campaigns. What's more disturbing is what happened after the war. Many scientists of Unit 731 were granted immunity by the United States in exchange for their research data, escaping justice entirely. Bombings, scorched earth, and forced labor. Beyond massacres and experiments, Japanese crimes in China also included systematic destruction of civilian life through bombings of civilian centers. Cities like Chongqing were relentlessly bombed, leaving civilians trapped in firestorms. Scorched earth tactics. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, and wells poisoned to starve Chinese resistance. Forced labor. Millions of Chinese civilians were conscripted into dangerous construction projects, mines and factories. Many never returned home. One survivor from Henan province recalled, "We dug until our hands bled, and if we slowed down, we were whipped like animals." The comfort women system. A particularly cruel system was the establishment of comfort stations, where women, many of them Chinese, were forced into sexual slavery for Japanese soldiers. The term comfort hides the reality: repeated rape, torture, and abuse. Survivors often lived with lifelong trauma, both physical and psychological. This system was not random. It was organized, regulated, and defended by the Japanese military, making it one of the starkest examples of state-sanctioned sexual violence in modern history. The human cost. By the end of World War II, it is estimated that 10 to 20 million Chinese civilians died as a direct or indirect result of Japanese invasion, war crimes, famine, and displacement. Entire provinces were devastated. The trauma lingered across generations, shaping Chinese memory and identity. Yet many of these crimes went under-acknowledged internationally, overshadowed by events in Europe. Justice was partial at best. While the Tokyo War Crimes Tribunal prosecuted some Japanese leaders, many perpetrators, especially from Unit 731, walked free. Memory, denial, and legacy. Today, the memory of Japanese crimes in China remains a deeply sensitive issue in East Asia. In China, the Nanjing Massacre and Unit 731 are taught as central historical lessons. Memorial halls stand in Nanjing and Harbin to ensure the world does not forget. In Japan, however, debates continue. Some leaders have issued apologies, but others have downplayed or denied the atrocities, sparking diplomatic tensions. For many survivors, the lack of full acknowledgement remains an open wound. The crimes committed were not just acts of war. They were acts against humanity. They remind us of what happens when imperial ambition erases empathy, when science abandons ethics, and when silence replaces justice. Conclusion. The story of Japanese crimes in China during World War II is not just about death, it is about memory, survival, and the responsibility to remember. These events challenge us to confront uncomfortable truths and to ensure that such horrors are never repeated. So as we close today's journey into this dark chapter, remember, history is not distant. Its shadows still shape our present, and its lessons remain vital. This was Sands of History. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to help us grow and reach more people with stories that must not be forgotten. And if you'd like to support us further, you'll find links in the description to help us financially. Your contribution allows us to keep bringing history to life. Until next time, let us keep uncovering the truths buried in the sands of history.